I love all the fails. So,
Yeah.
that's what following the presidential election is like, is all the fails.
I know. But, as we always say, yes, but we're getting what they deserve. That's the only thing. Like, yeah, it's funny. And yet also, fuck all of us. Like, they are destroying our world. But yes, like, just for the small.
Don't look up, gone real. Like, we are watching. Nobody gives a shit. We're all screaming and yelling at them. They all know we're screaming and yelling at them. They're not changing anything. Hunger Games, we're going to turn into Hunger Games somehow, and it's going to be normalized. Like, that's
yeah.
Anyway.
Happy sauce. Okay. But here's something good. Ooh, here we go. I hope you guys are all keeping up with the drinking. It really does make things feel a little less bleak just for the time being. Okay. The economy. The economy is stupid. I mean, the funny thing is, of course, we're not even talking Bidenomics anymore. I don't know if they've just given up talking about how we're all too stupid to realize how well we're doing. But that has not been, I haven't heard it this week, but maybe it's because they were having to deal with, you all are so stupid to think that he's too old. That was this week's propaganda spin.
The spin is still going to be that the Democrats just aren't telling people how good they're doing enough. So they need to work on their branding and messaging to tell people better about how well they did.
Yeah.
And so they send out like AOC, of course.
Oh my God.
Who will, I swear to God, in 20 years, she's Nancy Pelosi.
I mean, I don't think it's going to take that long.
Started as progressive as AOC claimed to be. She got into politics literally calling for universal health care within her first year or two. I mean, probably got elected for it, but I mean, she was calling for it. Now she's like, it's not realistic. We can't do it. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly thought it was going to take quite a bit longer. Sorry, I keep trying to give you time because I know that you're paused there, and then there's weird lag times. She is. I mean, listen. As soon as they started calling her Mama Bear, the gig was up. Like, it was very clear that they were just there to be Liz Warren players in the game, and that's who they are.
And Liz Warren, by the way, I keep derailing the show, but she is all in on shrinkflation and chip prices too now. Like, with the world gone mad, you don't put out the tweet with the Biden eyes, and then you don't put out a clip in lieu of actually speaking to the public at the Super Bowl. They put out a clip of Biden fighting for making sure your chip bags have enough chips.
Come on, folks. Yeah. I remember when I was young, that's malarkey. They used to say it was a 20-ounce bag and there'd be 20 ounces of chips. And now, have you ever noticed that? I mean,
but to me, you have to look at where are the progressives on all this. You got AOC saying Biden's the best president of her lifetime. You got Elizabeth Warren coming out, doubling down on Biden's failure on the shrinkflation potato chip.
Well, if you want to deal with the economy, Pat, if you're serious about dealing with the economy, you got to deal with the chips first. I thought you were talking about chip manufacturing. I was like, I haven't read what she said about the Chinese chip manufacturing, but you were talking about potato chips.
Potato chips, just to clarify.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, I did see that.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. And, I know we all know this, but, so much of the blame, yes, all these people in power who are vile and are selling us all out, but the media, right? Like, they should be holding these people to account and asking them the really difficult questions. There's so few who do. I don't know that Jeff Stein is a tough interviewer, but he does tend to, he's like a labor reporter, economy reporter. And this was a really, I thought, good thread that he was doing to combat all of the spin that's coming from the corporate news about the economy being so great. Had the pleasure yesterday to meet Father Gary Wagner, who runs a Detroit soup kitchen. Wagner says demand is up about 80% over last year, with hunger rising nationally. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor." Wagner said, "Only in America do we put the modifier, blessed are the deserving poor." Another piece was, I'm going to have to put my readers on as I get blurrier and blurrier, both from the alcohol and age. Here we go. Janika Austin, 42, a banquet server with 5 sons, saw her food stamps cut from $843 to $400 to $500. So, like, halved. as COVID aid expiration hit, thanks to Biden, hit 1 million Michiganders. She's torn between buying good groceries and internet for her sons. Austin laughed when I asked whether the economy is good. Nobody says that. Well, maybe she's not reading the New York Times and David Leonard.
Yeah, the messaging needs to reach her. People need to go knock on her door and tell her that, like, hey, things may be rough, but we're going to get more chips in your potato chip bag.
Get those college people out there.
If you elect us, and we're not actually going to even pass any legislation related to this stuff either. We're just going to scold the chip manufacturers for price gouging people.
And tell her that she's privileged if she doesn't vote for Joe Biden. They're going to blame her.
She ain't black. We know she ain't black. I already knew that.
This is Joseph Daniel, 44, operations manager at Crossroads. Yes, they're coming back on. A poverty reduction center. Crossroads reports a roughly 233% increase in demand for help for food. He said the economy is working for those at the top, but getting harder for the poor, which, this is Michigan. Just, I mean, not that it should all come down to, electoral votes, but like, this is a state that is between poverty and genocide. Biden's lost them.
When they talk about the economy as a whole, they're talking about the stock market, because if they step aside from that and they look at, and then GDP, which is gross domestic product, which is profits that corporations are making, and they're also global national corporations. So that's not even benefiting this country per se when they talk about US GDP. But if you want to look at the actual effect on people in this country, you need to look at wages and you need to look at rent and housing. Because those are the
power.
Your housing and rental bill are the number one thing, the biggest bill most people have. And housing is skyrocketed off the charts, and wages haven't kept up at all with inflation. So those two things are going to hurt everybody in the middle class and lower who aren't benefiting from their stock portfolios. And most of those people already own their home, so they're not feeling any of the effects of rental housing going up. That all the housing is owned by like 3 big corporations now that all own all the other big corporations. And they all own pieces of the other businesses that are benefiting. So like Blackstone owns Doritos. They own stock in housing markets.
3 companies in the world, basically.
Right. They own everything. And if you upset those companies, you don't get reelected. And that's what it comes down to. These people buy our politicians, and but if you want to fix our economy to where people feel like there's a difference, do something about the rental situation. Do something about,
and prohibit companies from buying single family homes. There's no reason, right? Like that. I mean, that in other countries, they have regulations and rules to prevent that, so that everybody has a fair shot. You don't keep Jerome Powell, who was appointed by your predecessor, who apparently is such a fascist that we're all, worried that we have to vote against him. And you keep him there, who says it's not going to be great. Vi, Kimmy, thank you so much. Oh, and thank you, Kimmy. Thank you. The inflation's only going to go down when more people are unemployed and interest rates. That
was their plan to lower inflation, while they're bragging about job creation. And the job creation was just because people thought the economy was, they thought COVID was gone. So that created jobs, got people back to work a little bit,
but not even as high as they were before COVID. And a lot of those jobs aren't good paying jobs. They're not full-time jobs. I mean, there's a whole series of hoops that they make people go, right? So, but then they can use that, pluck that piece of data and say, oh, look.
Right. All the metrics are fucked with. None of them, if you looked at jobs that actually included healthcare, I'm sure those jobs are down dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we both pulled the same article, but this is just amazing. Lockdown may have set productivity back 40 years. When you dig into that article, though, they were talking about productivity already was going down before COVID. They are very concerned about people wanting to work from home. They are always wanting to discipline labor. They do not like it that we are starting to see a resurgence of union workers applying or leveraging some of their power. We're going to get to that in a second, but should we just go through some of the bad news first? Let's keep going through more of the bad news.
Let's knock out the bad news and end on a high.
All right.
Although we don't have a high.
Well, there's a, I mean, yeah, okay. All right. A little bit. Yeah. This is not a high. U.S. infant mortality rate increased more last year than it has in 2 decades. You know, that's the other thing when they talk about excess death. That is an indication of young people dying, not old people dying. So that it's really shocking that we are just being so blasé about the fact that we are.
And you wouldn't say things are great. The economy is great when you have kids, more kids dying. That should be right there. You should look at the homeless numbers. The economy is great. Why do we have all these homeless people? Well, the economy is great. Why is there exponential medical debt? Which we have no idea how to handle the medical debt coming. We know how to handle the student loan debt. You run on it every year. So that's now a wedge issue that if we elect Biden in 2024, he will try to do some of the things he promised he was going to do in 2020. So, you know, they're not doing anything to help the average people other than saying the other guy's not doing shit, but we're going to try to do something.
Yeah, we saw what he did. And, you know, exactly. How many Democrats does he need in the Senate to get something done? Because they will make sure that they do not have that number always. Somebody will, of course, always be the Manchin or Sinema or the what's his face now, Fetterman. But yeah, we already saw it. We gave him the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and he didn't do any of that stuff. So, but he's not even running on that. He's actually not making an affirmative case that he's going to handle these. He's just saying it's going to get worse under Trump. I mean, it's just.
I think he has a good chance if he actually wins election of getting all his promises done because they're not running on a fucking single thing.
Right. Yeah. This time he'll accomplish all of it. He saved democracy. No, he can't even say that because you can't say that when you don't have a primary and you kick people off the ballot. So not saving democracy either. And I know we didn't talk about it, but Ohio just introduced a bill, which I think was bipartisan, to prohibit ranked choice voting, which is the one thing that you could do that would then shut up the vote blue no matter who brigade that, you know, well, a vote for, you know, anybody but Biden is a vote for Trump, that thing. Well, if you do ranked choice voting, then you don't have that issue, but they're going to take that away so that you don't even get to lodge the complaint that, hey, yeah, we would like the Green Party or the Independent or whatever. They're going to even take that away to just terrify people into only voting for Joe Biden.
Yeah, but I probably mentioned this before, but I temporarily was the actual executive director of a voting groups organization, which speaks very badly about them. I'm not going to lie, but I was as ED, I was like ED Pat, which, you know, erectile dysfunction is also ED, so that was not my favorite phrase.
Did you like that?
But, I mean, I made a joke about it, but it was a soft joke. I don't know. There's a joke there somehow.
Very limp.
But yeah, but I just want to say on that note, like, we got big meetings with some of the bigger voting change organizations out there trying to get some things like ranked choice voting passed. Right. And it was so clear that there was such a hierarchy within those organizations that they didn't even want outside ideas on it. Like they were insulted that we didn't approach them with enough respect. And I wasn't like boozy Pat from Twitter. I was actually coming at them from a serious position.
You wore a suit or something? You talk about
it was all Zoom calls, but you know, it was like they're like, well, first off, you know, some of the people working here are upset because you didn't go to the right channels to get to this position to have a meeting with us. I mean, it was all the political bullshit you can imagine, but like the Democratic Party, I think, had a hold on some of these groups, you know? So like, I think it's a big fucking shell game, but ranked choice voting would change the game and it would take away their biggest excuse that you're going to elect Trump if you vote for the third party guy. Yep. And they don't want it because then somebody's going to actually win. That's a third party person.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Biden set to come visit, I think tomorrow, East Palestine, if all goes according to plan, for the first time in a year.
A year later than Trump did.
I mean, so this is from Status Coup. I want to be here for my grandkids. As President Biden is finally set to visit East Palestine on Friday, we spoke with a female EP resident and nearby male resident in Palestine who were recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Vinyl chloride exposure is linked to a variety of cancers, including breast. People are talking about passing blood when they go to the bathroom, vomiting blood. Their water is still, like charcoal colored. So
and the people living there can't sell their houses to get out of there. You would think that these groups funneling money to solve these people's problems would actually just help them move, declare this an unsafe area to live, give these people money. But if they do that, it's acknowledging that the
government could actually do something.
Right. The government could do something, and they were complicit in the crime of not preventing chemical leaks.
Exactly. Yeah. And upgrading. I mean, there was one train derailment after another. We don't hear about that quite so much anymore because now we hear about, another door falls off a plane mid-flight over New York. Awesome. This is on Delta flight forced to turn back after maggots fall on passengers from overhead compartment. And maggots really only appear when there's something dead. So
yeah, I think it's interesting that we're seeing all this transportation disaster all
when we have Pete.
And that great. So you got to look at okay, who got rewarded for 2020, right? 2020, the people that played game was Pete. He became the transportation secretary, and then transportation has got disaster after disaster, strike breaking with the trains, strike breaking with not strike breaking, but union busting left and right, and literal disasters happening. And then Kamala Harris was gifted with, her whole thing was the border. And now the whole Democratic Party is, we're tough on the border, even though the border is a disaster, but it's a disaster not because we're not stopping people from getting in. It's a disaster the other way because we have fucking kids in cages. Still, and AOC, of course, hasn't fucking said a word about the kids in cages.
No. Well, she needs to bleach that beautiful white outfit and go back down there and cry by the chain link fence. Here in LA last week, we had the crazy rains, and this happens every time it rains. It is so disgusting. Massive sewage spills just run off right into, well, here I think it was even into the streets, but just run off right into the ocean. So always when it rains here, even if it drizzles, they say that the beaches are not safe for a few days because raw sewage, it overflows and they can't treat it fast enough, and it just gets pushed out into the ocean right on our beaches. So that's a country that's infrastructure is.
If the media was reporting on that, people would be so upset it would change, and that's what it comes down to. But
because what they never do is say who's to blame.
Right.
It's like it happened from the gods, Oh my God. But no, it's because you're cutting corners. You're paying back. We're privatizing all of our infrastructure. And so then, people's stocks have to go up. They have to have their stock buybacks. That's what happened with PG&E, right?
I was just going to say that, and that's why, this all comes back to just electing more Democrats is not the answer, because California is super Democratic, super majority, literal super majority, meaning even if the governor wanted to veto something, we could send it back. Legislation could pass without the governor's approval even. Of course, our government...
The way around that is you don't let it get to the floor.
Yeah, of course, which is what they did when they all pretended they wanted the state Medicare for all.
Right.
They just...
Gavin Newsom ran on.
Right. But Gavin Newsom, who is, in my opinion, still likely to be the nominee at the end of the Democratic convention, totally beholden to PG&E. PG&E knew about all these risks and all the fires that started here that killed countless people and raised all the rates for everyone else. Shouldn't have had their license renewed, basically, their contract renewed with the government based on failing all these things. And he just overlooked all that and said they're doing a great job. It's like, you're doing a great job, Brownie, which we ripped George W. Bush for, but Newsom gets pass on it.
Yeah. And people,
and all that was because they deregulated all these protections.
Maybe they let people bury the wires not at a full 18 inches below ground.
It's all about that.
You see what I did there?
No, it's actually, so most of the fire was started from these hook things that hang like this from the wires, right?
Right.
And they knew that there was erosion on the little hook part, and they knew it. The PG&E folks knew that this was happening, and they knew that that would eventually cause something to fall and spark and cause a fire. So what they did was they stopped. They said it was too expensive to send people out to take pictures of all these things and investigate. And then when they had the pictures, they're like, well, we got the pictures, but you can't tell from the pictures if it's damaged or not. So basically they just covered up this problem they knew they had. And that's all on Newsom, really.
Yeah. It's gross. Yeah. Complete shit show. I like that. Yes. And that is why when I was pregnant, this was, 21 years ago, and they gave me the whole list of fish that I couldn't eat. And I remember older people would say, when my day, it was never like that. People are too, uptight in your age, and you can't, you get all of people weighing in on how you should have a baby. That's because we poisoned the waters, because your generation kept voting blue no matter who and poisoned the waters. And now, fish have mercury and it is dangerous. Okay. I went to see, normalized cholera. That's right, Cora. Exactly. Honestly, they clearly just don't care about any of us. This was the latest, just like sad, Americans turn to tiny portable homes to combat unaffordable prices and mortgage rates. My dream shed.
Okay. So since we're on that, this week alone, I went to 2 different storage units for electrical work because people were living in the storage units, and what these 2 people chose to do, which was a mistake on their part. If you're going to try to live in a storage unit, like, God bless you, do what you can, $150 a month or something. But there's electricity that runs through to power some outside lights, and they tapped into that. They did their own electrical wiring to have some power in there.
Right.
But if you do that, power up the light again, because otherwise you're going to get caught. And but it points to,
they didn't split it; they just took it.
Right. It is an epidemic of people living in storage units. Is what I'm saying. It's a lot of people that it's just going unnoticed because they're not on the streets, they're not visible. These are invisible people literally living in storage units.
God,
along with the obvious onslaught. Wrong choice of words, but I live in Sacramento, and the growth of homelessness is just insane.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's just,
Los Angeles is horrifying.
Because it's one of the most unaffordable rents, and obviously LA is even worse. But
I just saw Barbara Lee saying that we need a $50 minimum wage. Good for her.
Amen.
Yep. Amen to that. I love that. That you want to solve homelessness, pay people so they can afford your crummy apartment rentals that are astronomical. Okay, but we do have a couple of little pieces of good news. This was last week. Connecticut Governor Ed Lamont says his state will purchase $1 billion of residents' medical debt for just $6.5 million. He will cancel it all, abolishing medical debt for 250,000 people.
That's amazing. And that's happening, I think, I want to say 4 different states at least right now are trying to do the same thing. So, that's something. And it's not a cure for everybody, but the fact that can help 250,000 people, and the fact that this debt is being bought for 6.5 million when it's $1 billion shows you how much just brazen, corrupt profit there is in this system.
Yeah. It's really vile. That's a lot of, there are these sort of debt collectives where they talk about, the more people get together and do that, and they can buy it for a fraction, like pennies on the dollar. Okay. Another piece of good news. Look at us. We're so cheerful. Today, Michigan, this was 2 days ago, is officially no longer a right to work state. Michigan is now the first state in nearly 60 years to ditch the union busting law. Public school workers can now collectively bargain. It's easier for unions to build power, and billionaires are furious. Good. Love it.
Amen. So we got Michigan. What was the other state?
That was Connecticut. We also have, wait for it, Minnesota, headed for a workers versus bosses showdown that's 10 years in the making. And the reason is several of their big unions have contracts expiring on the same day this spring. So they will be able to come together and really leverage their power across all of these unions with all these workers for healthcare, public schools, living. I wrote it all down. The four things are, work, schools, housing, and the environment, a livable planet. So,
notes are cheating, Lila. I don't like this notes trend.
I wrote it down.
This notes trend.
I got it on my teleprompter. And then this was just like a little button, but I thought, okay, so Mark Zuckerberg made around $9.6 million per hour, or $236 million per day in 2023. His major investments include a 30-bedroom bathroom compound and beer drinking Wagyu cattle.
Is that cattle raised on beer? Is that is that what that means?
So.
I don't know what that means.
I think that it reminds me of that scene from Night Shift. Did you ever watch Night Shift? That it was Ron Howard's first directing movie. It was with the Fonz and Michael Keaton. Yeah. And Michael Keaton's character is always like, Chuck, I got a good idea. And his idea is feed the mayonnaise directly to the tuna fish.
Right.
Okay. This is what they do in China, which, ready? The former president of China Merchants Bank on Monday was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve for taking bribes, abusing power, trading based on undisclosed information, insider trading, and leaking inside information. So there are ways to deal with that level of corruption.
I just want a 2-year reprieve. Does that mean, hey, we're going to kill you in 2 years? Is that what that means?
I think so, but I'm not
trying to understand, because that's
sure.
Almost crueler. That's
true.
I don't want the state killing people. I think, well, I don't know. I don't want to get into that. I was going to say I want people to kill people, but
yeah, I know.
I don't want to give anyone bad ideas, but the really evil people, I'm not going to, defend them in the least, whatever.
I know.
I'm with Mary, who started the show.
That's right. I don't know who they are. I'm sure they are, because of course that's what politicians do, try to launder their images with some of these things. So we'll have to see how it all goes. But, I even feel a little bit the way, it's one of my favorite movies, Night Shift. I even feel like, when Sean Fain says the right things, even though then he turns around and endorses Biden, or does sometimes, yes, I will absolutely criticize him when he sells people out, as we did, or I specifically did not like the stand-up strike idea. But I do think that having more people say out loud, every billionaire is a policy failure. Billionaires shouldn't exist. We need to tax the rich. We need to have everybody's contract end on the same day so we can do a massive general strike in 2028. I don't have faith in him, but I'm glad to hear those words out loud. Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned him, because I was thinking of him a few minutes ago when we were talking about this, because I appreciate everything he said, but I also obviously he endorsed Biden, which is Jesus Christ, but some of that might be part of how they got the deal, behind the scenes agreement, whatever. But I waiting to 2028 to have the general strike, how about next year, if things don't align for people? I know where he's going. He's setting us up for this longer thing, but we don't have 4 years to wait for a lot of people to get some help here. And
I know. It does feel like, there are different ways of organizing, and I guess he has to go through those channels. But yeah, even when, when the ICJ is like, oh, we'll come back in a month to review if you've really been not doing a genocide, it feels like the damage that can be done in that. So 4 years is, it's not a lifetime. It will be the end of several lifetimes, the way we're going to wait 4 years.